She was 4 pounds, premature. Her mother died minutes after giving birth. Every gorilla in the sanctuary rejected her. The vets gave her 24 hours. They tried everything. Nothing worked. Then, at 4 a.m., something woke the oldest gorilla in the facility, a gorilla who had been completely alone for 4 years. What happened next, nobody in 30 years of working with gorillas had ever seen. Before you watch, remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss another incredible story like this one. And write in the comments where you're tuned in from and what time it is there. Bwindi Sanctuary, Uganda, 2011. Day 1, 4:17 a.m. Dr. Maya Reed had been counting Jua's breaths for 3 hours, 14 per minute. It should have been 40. She was dying, not from illness, not from injury, from cold. Her core temperature dropped again, James said quietly behind her. Dr. James Kariuki, the sanctuary's chief veterinarian, had been awake as long as she had. His voice had the flat, careful quality of someone delivering information they didn't want to deliver. 35.1. We're losing ground. Maya pressed her hand against the glass. The baby, they had named her Jua, the Swahili word for son, because someone on the night shift had said they needed to give her something warm to hold on to. Made a sound. Soft. Desperate. The sound baby gorillas make when they need their mother. But Jua's mother was gone. And no one was coming. What are our options? Maya asked, though she already knew. We've tried everything. The incubator isn't enough. She needs body heat, real body heat, another gorilla. James paused. We've attempted introduction with every nursing female in the facility. Amara, Zuri, Nia, all 3 rejected her within minutes. Aggression? No, just indifference. They smelled the mother's death on her. They turned away. Maya understood the biology. She didn't have to like it. And hand-rearing? At this temperature, with this respiratory rate, hand-rearing alone won't be enough. She needs warmth she can feel. Warmth that breathes. James was quiet for a moment. Maya, I have to be honest with you. If her temperature drops below 35 by morning, we're looking at organ failure. We have maybe 24 hours, maybe less. 24 hours. Maya stared at Jua through the glass. She had been at Bwindi for 11 years. She had seen births and deaths and everything in between. She had learned, slowly and painfully, that some things couldn't be fixed. That nature made decisions that humans couldn't override. She had learned that. She just hadn't accepted it. 11 years ago, on her first week at Bwindi, an older keeper had told her something she had never forgotten. The ones who survive, he had said, are never the strongest. They are always the ones who find one reason, just one. She had thought about that sentence 1,000 times since. She had never understood it, completely, until tonight. Let me walk the facility, she said. James looked at her. Maya, it's 4 in the morning. I know what time it is. She took a flashlight and walked. Past the main troop enclosure, where 7 gorillas slept in their nests, breathing slow and steady in the dark. Past the juvenile area, where 3 young males who were too rough and too unpredictable for a premature infant lay sprawled across each other like puppies. Past the medical recovery unit, past the quarantine bay, past the empty enclosures that smelled of earth and old straw. She stopped at the end of the corridor, the last enclosure, the one they called the quiet one. Inside, in the far corner, sat Babu, 38 years old, a silverback who had once led a troop of 14, who had held his position for 9 years, longer than any male in the sanctuary's history, whose chest beat could be heard from 2 buildings away when he was young and certain of his place in the world. That was 4 years ago. 4 years since a younger male named Kego had challenged him. 4 years since Babu had fought and lost and walked away from everything he had built. 4 years of living alone in this enclosure at the end of the corridor, eating his food, sleeping his sleep, watching the walls. The other keepers felt sorry for him. Maya had always thought he seemed less like a gorilla in mourning and more like a gorilla waiting. For what? She had never been able to say. Every morning, without fail, Babu would position himself at the mesh barrier that faced his old troops' enclosure. He would sit there for hours, watching Kago move through the group that had once been his, watching the females who no longer looked in his direction, watching the young ones, born after his exile, who had never known him as anything other than the old male behind the barrier at the end of the corridor. He never made a sound during those hours. He just watched, as if he was waiting for someone to remember him. No one ever did. She stood at the observation window and looked at him. Babu was asleep now, his massive body curled against the far wall, his breathing slow and even. In the faint light, she could see the silver that covered his back like frost, the mark of age and dominance that meant nothing now that he was alone. Maya was about to turn away. Then she heard it. From 3 enclosures away, through concrete walls and metal doors, and the thick silence of the early morning, Jua's distress call. Soft, desperate, barely audible. Babu's eyes opened. Maya went completely still. The old silverback lifted his head. His nostrils flared. His eyes, dark and deep and suddenly, startlingly alert, moved toward the sound. He made a sound of his own, low, quiet, almost too quiet to hear, but Maya heard it. She had worked with gorillas for 11 years. She had heard every vocalization in their repertoire, threat displays, contact calls, alarm signals, play sounds, grief sounds. She had never heard this one before, or rather, she had heard it once, years ago, from a mother gorilla whose infant had rolled too far from her during the night and woken in the dark, frightened. It was a comfort call, the sound a parent makes to tell their child, "I hear you, I'm here, you are not alone." Maya's hand was shaking as she reached for her radio. "James," she said, "come to Babu's enclosure, now." "Maya, what now, please?" James arrived in 4 minutes. He took one look at Maya's face and didn't ask questions. "Watch," she said. Through the observation window, they watched Babu. The old silverback had moved to the mesh barrier at the front of his enclosure. The barrier that separated him from the corridor, from the nursery 3 doors down, from the sound that had woken him. He pressed himself against it. Not aggressively. Not with the posture of a male asserting dominance or demanding access. He pressed himself against it the way a person presses against a door they can't open. Leaning into the barrier, his body flat against the mesh. His face turned toward the direction of the sound. Jua cried again. Babu responded immediately, that same low, quiet comfort call. His massive hand came up and gripped the mesh, his knuckles white. "He can hear her," James whispered. "He's been hearing her," Maya said. "I don't know for how long." James was quiet for a long moment, watching. "Maya, what are you thinking?" "I'm thinking we have 24 hours. I'm thinking every female in this facility has already said no. I'm thinking—" She stopped. "I'm thinking he's been alone for 4 years, and the moment he heard that baby, he woke up. He's a 38-year-old silverback. If he becomes aggressive with a premature infant, I know the risk. The protocol is clear. Introducing a lone male to a vulnerable infant without— I know the protocol, James." Maya turned to look at him. "I also know that baby has 24 hours, and I know that in 11 years I have never heard Babu make that sound, not once." She looked back at the old silverback, still pressed against the mesh, still calling softly into the dark. He knows she's there. He's been answering her. James was silent for a long time. "We don't open the barrier," he finally said. "Not yet. We move the nursery enclosure adjacent to his. close enough for heat transfer through the mesh. We monitor every minute. If there's any sign of aggression, we pull her immediately. Agreed? Agreed. It took 40 minutes to move the equipment. 40 minutes of careful, quiet work while Jua's temperature held at 35.1, and Babu waited at his barrier without moving. At 5:23 a.m., they positioned the nursery enclosure directly against Babu's. Mesh to mesh. 6 centimeters of metal between them. Jua lay on her heated mat, 3 feet from the barrier. Babu stood on the other side. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Babu lowered himself to the ground. Slowly, deliberately, the way old animals move when they have decided something. He lay down along the full length of the mesh barrier, his body pressed flat against it, every inch of him in contact with the metal. His face turned toward Jua. He made the comfort call again. Jua's head turned. Her clouded, exhausted eyes, the eyes of an animal that had been fighting to stay alive since the moment she arrived in the world, found the shape on the other side of the mesh. She made a sound. Not the desperate distress call of before. Something smaller, quieter. Something that sounded to Maya standing at the observation window with tears she hadn't noticed until they were already on her face, like a question. "Are you there?" Babu rumbled softly. "I'm here." Jua moved, not quickly. She was too weak for quick. But she moved, 3 inches, then 6. A slow, determined crawl across the heated mat, toward the mesh barrier, toward the warmth on the other side. She pressed herself against the mesh, her tiny body, barely 4 pounds, barely alive, against the metal. On the other side, 380 pounds of silverback. Gorilla body temperature runs higher than human. 380 pounds of silverback generates more heat than any incubator the sanctuary owned. James knew this. Standing here, watching it happen, he wished he didn't. His body heat radiating through the mesh like a furnace. "Temperature," Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. James checked the monitor. His hand was shaking. 35.1, he said. It dropped again. Maya's stomach tightened. She pressed both palms flat against the observation glass. Babu hadn't moved. Jua hadn't moved. Both of them pressed against opposite sides of the same 6 centimeters of metal, motionless in the dark. "Give it time," Maya said. Though she wasn't sure if she was talking to James or to herself. 5 minutes passed. 10. "Temperature," she said again. James checked. A long pause. 35.4, he said quietly. "It's going up." Maya didn't say anything. She couldn't. She just stood at the glass with her hands pressed flat against it and let out a breath she felt like she'd been holding for hours. Babu did not move from that position for 9 hours. The staff arrived at dawn to find him exactly where he had been. Flat against the mesh, body pressed to the metal, face turned toward the infant on the other side. He had not eaten, had not slept, had not moved. He had just stayed. By evening, Jua's temperature was 37.2, normal range. He just needed someone to need him, Maya said. 3 days later, she opened the barrier. Babu sat perfectly still as the mesh slid back. He didn't move toward Jua, didn't reach for her, didn't make a sound. He just waited. Jua took 4 minutes to cross the distance between them. When she reached him, she stopped, looked up at him. He looked down at her. Then she climbed onto his foot. And Babu, 38 years old, 4 years alone, reached down and curved one enormous hand gently around her back, the way he had done through the mesh, except now there was nothing between them. Jua never slept away from Babu's side, not once, not in 7 years. In his last year, Babu moved more slowly, slept longer, ate less. But every morning he rose, and every morning Jua was there. Babu died on a Tuesday morning in March. Peacefully, in his sleeping nest. The keepers had found him at dawn. and beside him, pressed against his body, was Jua. At dusk, she lay down along the full length of his body, pressed herself flat against him, her small body against his stillness, giving back the only thing she knew how to give: warmth. She had no memory of that first night, of the cold, of the 9 hours he had spent motionless against the metal to keep her alive, but her body remembered, and she stayed with him until morning. For 4 years, no one had remembered Babu, but Jua remembered, in the only language that had ever mattered: warmth for warmth, weight for weight, the way he had stayed with her. Did this story touch your heart? If yes, write yes in the comments. A baby gorilla given 24 hours to live, saved by an old gorilla who had nothing left but warmth. Do you believe some souls find each other exactly when they need to? Yes or no? Write your answer. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Thanks for listening. See you in the next video. Have a great day.